Good afternoon, Mr. Bond. Today we're going to be looking at another Roger Moore James Bond film on cars, on television and film, which is The Spy Who Loved Me. This was filmed in 1976 and released in 1977. It stars Roger Moore as James Bond, Barbara Bach as Anya Masova, Walter Kottel as General Gogol, Kurt Jurgens as Stromberg, Richard Keel as Jaws, Lois Maxwell as Moneypenny, Desmond Llewellyn as Q, and Bernard Lee as M. Obviously Shane Rimmer from the Jerry Anderson television series, he has a part as well as Captain Carter, I think his name is. The Spy Who Loved Me was filmed in Canada, in Japan briefly, in the Bahamas, in Sardinia, at the Pinewood Studios backlot, of course, like so many of the Bond films, and in Switzerland and in Egypt. The plot of Spy Who Loved Me is a very well-known thing. I don't wish to dwell too much on it, but someone has invented a submarine tracking system whereby nuclear submarines can easily be identified by their wake, and somebody intends to put East and West at war by ordering the submarines to attack their own cities. The person behind this is Stromberg, who for some reason wants to destroy the world and create a world underneath the ocean, which I don't know if particularly I understand his motivation behind it, but that's just the way that these things go. It's a very well photographed film. The director is Lewis Gilbert, who had worked on You Only Live Twice and went on to work on Moonraker, that we'll cover again at some point. And a lot of production crew are the familiar ones. We've got Albert R. Broccoli, who is the producer, his former business partner Harry Saltzman having resigned from his position by this point due to financial difficulties. The music is by Marvin Hamlish, who I think is a New York-based composer. He wasn't associated with the Bond series before. I can't remember why John Barry didn't come back. It's probably for tax reasons or something like that. Generally, that's why John Barry didn't score more Bond films. The music is very good. Obviously, the main theme song is the Spy is Nobody Does It Better, sung by Carly Simon. There's a wonderful piece of music called Bond 77 that appears in things like The Ski Chase, where you see Michael Billington, who was one of the people who was perhaps going to be Bond, killed off by Roger Moore. The whole photography of the film is absolutely excellent, and actually Stanley Kubrick himself was an advisor on the lighting for some of it. The Liparis tanker set that you see in The Spy Who Loved Me was the largest set in film history up until that point, and was actually built at Pinewood Studios as what was just at the time called the 007 stage. It's since been rebuilt and renamed several other times too. The Spy Who Loved Me was really a film that could have made or broken the Bond franchise, really like Let Live and Let Die, because of the financial problems that Harry Saltzman had, and having sold his half of Eon Productions and Dan Jack LLC to Albert Broccoli. There was a feeling that this couldn't perhaps actually go any forward, but so many of the themes of it, in terms of East meets West, in terms of someone who's Bond's opposite number but kind of his equal in many ways, and so many other things about this film are absolutely excellent. We'll get into a little bit later on whether or not this film is worth watching in 2020, and I think many of you will already know the answer to that question already, but nevertheless we have to ask it. But let's look at some of the cars in The Spy Who Loved Me, and we'll start off, of course, with one of the most famous cars in any film ever. So the most famous car in The Spy Who Loved Me, and one of the most famous Bond cars or any cars of any type, is a 1976 Lotus Esprit S1 PPP 306R. Now, there were lots and lots and lots of different Esprits used in the film. Some of them were just body shells that could be fired into the water or dragged by a rope up the beach. Some of them actually drove, two in particular. The main car, and then there was a backup car that was Colin Chapman's own personal car, him still being charged of Lotus at the time. Then Derek Meddings and his crew made some special effects models, and Derek Meddings, of course, who again worked on the Jerry Anderson TV series. Some very, very good work indeed on this film in particular. There was a submarine that was built by a submarine company in America, I think Miami, for a lot of money, well over $100,000, I think. And that wasn't an enclosed submarine. It had just doors that let water in, so you had to wear reeling equipment if you wanted to pilot it. That's the one you kind of see moving around underwater, the sort of full-size one. There were, models and things too. I've heard that actually between 7 and 9 cars in total were used if you count all the different types, which is really impressive. Obviously, the way that Lotus got their car into the film itself is rather a funny story, because in 1976, when Lotus heard that the Bond producers were looking up for a new car, I don't think they wanted to use Aston Martin particularly again at this point. The head of PR, a chap called Don McLaughlin, parked a debadged Esprit outside the Eon production offices at Pinewood Studios and just left it there. And after a while, Eon got in touch with Lotus and they put a deal together, which was fantastic. When they went to Sardinia to film the iconic car chase between a car, a helicopter, and a motorcycle and sidecar, they found out that the stunt drivers that they had, I think George Leach was one of them, they couldn't slide the car, so it didn't look particularly good. The handling of Esprit was so good, it wasn't any good for the stunts. So what they did was get Lotus test driver Roger Becker, to be the main stunt driver for the car, and he could slide the car and go really fast and actually make it look a lot better on film than the stunt drivers themselves could do, because they just weren't used to the handling and grip of the Lotus Esprit. So he's the one you actually see doubling for Roger Moore in most of the sequences in Sardinia. The car that is actually chasing them at one point as well is a 1976 Ford Taunus Gear. Richard Keel, Jaws, is in the car. He doesn't drive it, but he's the passenger and trying to take them out. There were 2 Taunuses used in this sequence. Ford supplied them itself. This was the brand new Taunus, the sister car to the Mark IV Cortina, and in dark colours with the gear badge. It looks really nice, although it did obviously meet an end, and they destroyed 2 cars. One they went off the cliff with, and one they actually smashed into a house. And the house has especially been designed by Ken Adam himself, just for that scene, which was a bit excessive, but this is a Bond film, and that's just what happens. The other prominent vehicle that actually features in The Spy Who Loved Me is a 1975 Leyland Sherpa. This was a very early appearance for Sherpa, because I think they went into production in 1974 under the name the New Austin Morris van or something, but by 75 it was called the Sherpa. But you see it being disintegrated by Jaws in a very famous scene in Egypt, where he literally tears the thing apart with his bare hands, around Barbara Bach's inability to actually drive the thing. It's an interesting scene. It's very funny. and it shows the build quality or lack thereof of a Sherpa, which doesn't offer particular protection from someone who's, I think, 7'2" and with steel teeth. But there we go. Those are probably the main vehicles used with Spy Who Loved Me. There are a few others as well, though. One of the vehicles that you see elsewhere in The Spy Who Loved Me is the 1976 Kawasaki Z900A4 motorbike with a sidecar. That, again, I think was actually product placed by Kawasaki, because they also provided Roger Moore with his own jet ski, which looks absolutely brilliant. I love the look of this really old jet ski that you see elsewhere in the film. The motorbike itself and the sidecar were actually driven by two separate stuntmen. The sidecar had a little engine in it, and it could be driven around by the stuntman, who had a little bit of visibility in the front with a special nose cone, so you could see where he was going. It's an interesting thing that they put so much work into just secrets, but it makes it brilliant. The car chase, with all these different threats that Bond and Major Massiver are facing. Of course, and it's got to be a Bond film with lots of mini mokes, and in the enormous set in the Leparis tanker, you see the mini moke being driven around by some stuntmen, which eventually falls into water. We think this is an early car. It's a British-built one, and the windscreen's been chopped down, which you can see in you know, some of the nice photographs that has been taken from the film. Obviously, being a Bond film, the screen captures are a lot better than otherwise would be for these old TV series what I cover. The lorry that the sidecar crashes into is a 1974 Volvo F86. Obviously, it's towing two different things behind it, and it was safer to blow the trailer at the back up rather than one at the front. The Volvo lorry is right-hand drive. I don't know whether it's an Italian spec or not. I've heard different things about this, but I always find the motorcyclist being covered in feathers and falling off the side of the cliff. I just find it really, really funny. The tone of the film getting a little stupid at times. I mean, putting musical jokes in like the Feed Lawrence of Arabia is a little bit much, but overall it works really, really well, and it's just a very, very well made film. So there we are. That was just a brief rundown of some of the cars used in The Spy Who Loved Me. It is one of my favourite Bond films. I think Roger Moore is fantastic in it, and how could he not be? Barbara Bach, I don't know whether it's her acting ability or how she's written and things. She's not really my favourite of the ladies who appear in Bond, but she's okay. She's good. Kurt Jurgens, he's a good villain, but in comparison with a lot of others, I don't think he really quite measures up. He's not as iconic as Goldfinger or 006 or anything like that. But overall, the film was very well received at the time, and it made a lot of money, and it's just what the Bond series needed to actually keep going. And yes, it really succeeded, and it's not perhaps as good as some of the others I could mention. I still prefer Her Majesty's Secret Service for many reasons, but yes, it's a fantastic film to show to anyone, really. Very, very well made indeed, and the Lotus Esprit that's in that is just so iconic. It's possibly the second most famous car in the world after the DB5, that we'll no doubt cover in another episode of Cars on Television and Film. So thank you ever so much indeed for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. Please don't forget to like this video and leave a comment below. I've got a Facebook page, facebook.com/Lloyd I do apologise for the motorcycle background noise. There's not a lot I can do about that. And I've got an Instagram page too, instagram.com/Lloyd_vehicle_consulting. Thank you.